And today what we're looking at is the twin slim fan shroud thingamajigger that Rob and I came up with. You guys have seen this part before here, which is the prototype. And because this is basically just a fan shroud, instead of talking about what it does, because I mean it's pretty self-explanatory, I'm going to talk about what we changed between the prototype and the final production version. Here's the prototype. And the first thing you'll notice is down at the bottom here, there is no legs. Okay, now these were just temporary fabricated legs in order to, test it and everything. What we did was we got rid of the legs at the bottom. Now, the reason for this is because, quite simply, it's just added work that doesn't need to be there. The two 10mm bolts that hold it up top is more than sufficient to hold it in. These actually, despite my best efforts to make it tight and fit, it just ended up floating there anyways. So we got rid of that. The next thing is these arms here. This is just kind of a production value thing, is we actually just ended up adding tabs to the edges there, and they're adjustable for height. Now that's going to change based on which radiator you're using. So we added those slots there because, as you can tell with the prototype, it was kind of gimmicky to get it to go in. Another thing that we changed was, you'll notice that this prototype here has these holes machined into the face of them. We changed that because when we were at low speeds and the fans would kick in, we actually couldn't get the coolant down in temperature enough. So I left one of these attached. What I did was I took aluminum tape and I covered them up, and I continuously covered them up until we got it to work. We ended up having to cover them all up in order to get it to work at low speed. Now, why did we put the holes in the first place? Well, because the shroud is so thick, so close to the radiator, there was concerns that we wouldn't get enough flow through the fans themselves in order to cool it sufficiently at high speed. So the holes were made there in order to compensate for high speed cooling. Turned out that once we had them plugged, the low speed issue was fixed, and it didn't have a single effect on high speed in any way, shape, or form. So we got rid of those holes. The other thing is these fans were originally mounted using 3 of the mounting points, and we changed that to using all 4. Before, we had just a standard hole, and you'd receive hardware that would bolt it down. And in the final production version, we added these threaded inserts that are part of the shroud itself, so they're always there, and there's no nut that you need to add to the back. You just simply screw it in. That was done in order to make it so you could add or remove or change the fans without actually having to remove the shroud, which makes working on it much easier. Because of the change of using the 4 mounting points, though, we did have to shrink the logo, the Unique Performance logo on the front. The other thing we did is something I'd requested before, but for style, this version we have a 45 degree, which kind of tapered it. And the downside is that because of that taper, the fan actually stuck over the edge here. Well, with this one here, we did a square design, so it's a full 90 degree, and that allows the fan to sit right up on the edge there. Now there is a gap here, and there's a gap in the middle, and that's for people who want to use a little bit larger fans. If the mounting points are the same, there are different brands of fans that will actually utilize that extra distance. In these particular fans, they don't, so that little air gap is there, but it's small enough that it doesn't affect performance. Because otherwise, when we had this one here, we still had that air gap, and we never taped that up, so it's not going to affect anything. So that's the core differences between that. Now, we did add a rubber seal along the edge of the frame of it, and that's to remove the metal on metal kind of sound that you could get. if this rattled a bit due to fan vibration. So the fabricator decided that he was going to put this rubber seal on, and that prevents the fan shroud from rubbing against the metal radiator, causing you to slowly wear a hole in your radiator. So that covers that. It also produces a nice tight seal around the edge, which on this one, again, we had to do, but I removed. You can still see some of the tape. We had to tape the top of the and the bottom of the shroud in order to close it properly against the radiator to get proper flow. So this rubber isolator prevents you from having to tape it, and has other added benefits along with that too. So all in all, we've changed to a much more unified design. It's just, in my opinion, a lot more cleaner, a lot more of a finished product. And the difference is that this one here is for 2010 to 2012 2.0 Ts. The 2013 and the 3.8s, they're a little bit taller, and that's because the radiator is a full height radiator. The 2010s is a little bit shorter because the fan shroud, the factory fan shroud, actually comes down and draws air through the intercooler. That was Hyundai's tactic on that. So we've eliminated that. So this is really orientated more for people who won't be taking advantage of that factory thing because they've switched to a front mount intercooler. As for wiring, there's been some questions because this one here has a harness plug. Well, in 2013, Hyundai changed the harness plug. There's no actual physical, like there's the shape of it is different, but there's no actual electrical benefit to them changing the plug. I figure they just did it because they started using that plug on different vehicles. To reduce costs, they'll switch to the same plug. But because of that, and because of the fact that we'd actually have to order 1,000 to 7,000 of these at a time, we won't be doing a plug-and-play electrical setup. Plus, it just raised the cost more when everybody's quite competent in doing it themselves. Some people are going to have to use relays, some people won't. These particular fans at peak, so startup amperage is about 11 to 12 amps, and the factory fan shroud itself in total is 40 amp draw. So when these two fire up, they'll be significantly less than the factory one. So I can actually maintain and use the factory electrical to drive them. Now, my recommendation is that if you're going to use something like a Flexolite or something really high performance like 40 amps per fan, then you're going to want to toss a relay kit in, and then you're going to have the relays here controlled by the computer using the factory plug, and then you're going to have the power come from your battery to feed the fans. Now, the reason I'm saying to use the factory plug either way is because in certain situations the fans kick on even when you're at you're not over temperature, because the AC clutch kicks in and you're trying to use the AC. Well, if you're using a thermal probe to control your fans, the computer can't tell the fans to turn on to help cool the, or help use the air compressor or the air conditioning correctly. It won't be able to draw through there. So always leave it computer controlled whenever you can, just because there's other features built into the ECU's programming that utilize the fans that you'll be bypassing if you do it your own way. So every fan shroud comes with mounting screws. We've gone with a screw cap style that uses a torque, and that just kind of shrinks everything and tidies it up. And they are a number 10-24, I believe, for their thread. So it's a standard North American, or American, I should say, because I'm Canadian, thread size that you can get like anywhere. Canadians get Canada Tire sells that. Canadian Tire sells those. Americans, I'm sure you can get them at whatever the equivalent is. Home Depot, I guess. So that is the fan shroud. So this is the final production version for 2010 to 2012s. The future ones are the 3.8s and the 2013 plus 2.0 Ts. You guys are going to be a little bit taller. we've left a headroom at the top instead of staggering them or pushing them to the top or to the bottom. We've left them centered, and that's for the 3.8T guys. So we've made sure that no matter what fan you use, you're gonna always clear that crossover pipe for your turbo kits. The other thing, the other consideration was, and I have to thank Jesse for finding this out with his newer coupe, is the 2014 3.8s use a different AC line and serpentine routing. So what we've done is made sure that, to the best of our abilities, that that doesn't become an issue just because you swap this over. Big question also was overflow reservoirs, because the factory one doesn't mount to this. The factory one can't actually mount to this because the fan is actually centered on the factory one, and you have all this room on the side where we've gone the whole width of the radiator. We're actually coming out with a reservoir that's going to be mounted in the middle. It's going to use the existing mounting points, so you're not having to worry about buying a version or that supports it and a version that doesn't support it. They're all going to support it. Everything we're going to do is kind of done in tiers for those who want to source their own or already have part of their kit, and those that want an all-inclusive. We're working towards that. So that's the radiator shrouds that we've done, and hope you guys like them. Hope it's something that some of you guys will find use for, and we will see you guys in the next video.